What's going on, y'all? It's Sae'Von, aka the Vegan Heathen. I hope y'all are blessed. I hope y'all are balanced. Today, we're gonna talk about mastering. Now, what is mastering? Why? How is it different from mixing? I got you. All right. Basically, mastering is the final stage of taking a stereo file or your final mix and getting it ready to be released to the world. If you assume that you can never change it again. Now, it's not necessarily true, but what we're talking about, let's assume that's how it goes, right? Now, mastering, historically speaking, was called mastering because that was the master copy that was sent to the printing presses that would print out the vinyls, and all the duplicates would be made from this master copy. So it was very important that this final version, this master, was as perfect as it could be. So what does mastering entail? Well, typically, mastering is when you're gonna go through, make sure that any final equalization is done across the whole spectrum. And that's an important thing because any effects, any processing, whether it's EQ, compression, saturation, limiting, stereo, enhancement, all of this is going to happen to the entirety of the mix. Whereas in mixing, you can make a change to just the vocal or just the bass, right? In mastering, any changes that are made happen to the whole song, the entire mix, to the master bus, right? So that's something to be kept in mind. But by doing that, there's a different level of cohesion that's brought in because what's being done is happening to everything. So that's important to keep in mind. Now, in terms of mastering, there's kind of a couple different mindsets on it, right? And neither one is necessarily right or wrong, but effectively it's kind of in three camps. You either pay a mastering engineer is one option, you use a service like LANDR, or you do it yourself. And there are pros and cons to each one. Let's say you pay somebody, which is probably gonna be one of the most common options, at least historically it has been. Why would you do that? For one, a mastering engineer is highly specialized in mastering. I mean, a lot of times we're talking about people who have spent 5, 10, 15, 20 plus years mastering exclusively. So they're not producing, they're not mixing, they're literally just mastering tracks. So you gotta keep in mind that the gear they have, the acoustic treatment in their environment, their studio, and their ears are highly tuned for this process. And oftentimes, that's really what you're gonna be paying for because, yeah, paying someone who's a mastering engineer is usually gonna be the most expensive option, but in a lot of cases, it's going to give you the best results, okay? Now, another option, which has become much more common, is using a service like LANDR, where you can actually upload your stereo track to their platform. Then they use some artificial intelligence, magic, and they spit out a master for you. Now, it's not like you just click one button. There are a couple of nuances, so maybe you click 3 buttons, but it's faster than a mastering engineer, and you don't have to rely on your own skill set to get what would usually be a pretty decent master. Now, the third option, which is going to be what most of this video is about, is doing it yourself. Now, a lot of times, at least when I started out, there was kind of this apprehension or the fear around doing it myself. For one of the reasons I was a little apprehensive was because I'm like, I don't have a perfectly treated environment. I still don't, or I don't have the greatest monitors or headphones, you know what I mean? Or can I really trust my ears? Are they that trained to hear the differences or the nuances that I need to hear or be able to detect to get the most out of the mastering process? But the beautiful part is, it's really not as complicated as it may seem, because in reality, the main things that are going to be going on are a little bit of EQ, some corrective EQing, and some sweetening, a little bit of compression to glue things together, some stereo enhancement, perhaps some saturation, and limiting, which is the part that makes the song loud, right? And that's effectively what goes into your mastering. Now, do keep in mind, right, that the better your mix is, the less, so this might be controversial, the less important the master is. Because a lot of times, especially newer artists, because I was this way, there's this idea that the master is gonna come in and just change everything and just make everything that was bad, good. That's not really the case. The master is going to work with what is given based on the rough mix or the final mix. So my recommendation to y'all would be to make sure that you are happy and satisfied with your mix. Assume that when your mix comes back mastered, all that happened is that it was limited, it was louder, and it's up to technical specifications for distribution. Don't assume that it's going to come back sounding 120%, 200% better than the mix, because if you do, you're probably setting yourself up for a little bit of disappointment, because that's not the intention of mastering. Mastering is supposed to be very subtle, very nuanced, right? So just keep all of that in mind.